Review code provided by Crows. I'm Jared.
I'm Marcus.
Level with us. Hello and welcome to Level With Us, the show where we have a cozy video game discussion every week, and this week we were provided a review code to review The Stanley Parable Ultra Deluxe. And we've played the original Stanley Parable, but we're really grateful to the developers Crows for allowing us the chance to review it on the show. So before we talk about what we thought of the game, we have a little segment that I like to call What Is Even Happening? So, Marcus, if you had to describe this game to someone who didn't know anything about it, what would you say?
This is a podcast by a man named Marcus. Marcus sat at his desk finding out that describing a meta video game was more than he had bargained for. Okay, so what do we have here? This game, more than other games, is one of those, if you haven't played it, you probably shouldn't listen to reviews about it. Not because of any specific spoiler, but because the entire experience hinges so much upon your expectations of the game. So if I was to just give the short log line here, it's a walking simulator where it has a lot of commentary through a literal narrator about choice and freedom in video games. If I was to get deeper, actually no, that's pretty much it on the surface.
Yeah, this game is all about the narrative and humor. There is very little gameplay to speak of. This is a game that you experience. And I agree with you, it is kind of hard to talk about it because I could share about my favorite moments, but then they're not as special when you go through the game the first time. But luckily there's a free demo that you can get on Steam, so you can try that, and it's original. It's stuff that's not even in the game.
In true Stanley Parable fashion, part of the demo is about the fact that it's a demo. So
exactly.
I do recommend that anyone listening to this who's I might play it, just, you have my permission to stop listening to this podcast and come back later, or don't come back later. It's more important to me that you play this game, or at least the demo.
For sure. And the demo's really great, and it'll give you a taste of whether you'd like the full release, including the Ultra Deluxe release, which also in true Stanley Parable fashion, I was wondering what it meant. And I think everyone who heard this announced wondered, what does it mean to have an Ultra Deluxe version of this game? What new content is there? And that's exactly what the game, messes with you about. Very early on, if you've played the original, they'll throw the quote-unquote new content at you, but they'll acknowledge, oh, is this the new content? Is this the new content?
Yeah, there's literally doors that say on the door, new content. It's very overt about it because of just the meta nature of the game.
That's right. And, I wasn't disappointed by that. Something that I loved about playing this game is that it made me laugh out loud again, and I haven't done that in so long in playing a video game. So that's something I was really happy about when I started playing. I think all the new content, I don't know if I've seen all of it. That's another thing, is you never really know if you've reached the ending because there's so many endings. But from what I have done, what it adds to the original is very funny and very fun.
Yeah, I really feel like with the new content of this game, it's simultaneously commenting on multiple things. One is the desire to take all feedback, whether or not it actually is actually means the improvement of a game or a creative project. It makes this whole deal out of these negative Steam reviews, which was very funny. And implementing the feedback from the reviews.
They take literal reviews and say, oh, this person wanted this. Well, we added it. Here you go.
Exactly.
Something you told me early on, because you got to play the game before I did, was that to boot up the game multiple times, to not just try and do it all in one sitting. And I'm really glad you told me that, because I was not disappointed. The game will ask you lots of questions before you play that are very funny. because I've been playing more and more non-Nintendo games, and a lot of non-Nintendo games will always make you adjust like a brightness slider before you start the game. Make sure this symbol is barely visible, you know, and so they poke fun at that, but then they also ask you how your day is going, and some other things that I won't spoil, but it was very fun to also have that surprise. The game is just full of surprises, and that's what's fun about it.
I think it recaptured a lot of the subversiveness of the first game. Like, you know, we thought that maybe, this one is gonna feel a little bit, old or redundant or just more of the same, and it is more of the same, but in kind of the cheeky way that it like is so self-aware that it subverts your expectations even if you expect subversion. It's just constantly throwing out new ideas at you.
And part of that is the excellent writing by Davey Redden, who also produced a game called The Beginner's Guide, which we highly recommend. You mentioned how subversive this game was at release, Marcus, and that's kind of a question I wanted to ask you when we decided to do an episode on this game, is back in, 2012?
13.
So back in 2013, when the game originally came out, it was heralded as so subversive, so postmodern. But I feel like years later, it's we've already had that. Does the game still hold up for today's audience?
That's an excellent question. I think that even people who are familiar or even tired with meta tropes, I think that they would actually still have a really interesting, unique experience with this game because of how distilled this is. We've already talked about how there isn't much in the way of gameplay. It distills down this idea of freedom and choice in video games in such a small package. Just the simple idea of when coming to two open doors, Stanley chose the door on his left. It's just the simplest way of being like, oh wait, if the game wants me to do something, is it possible for me to do something the game doesn't want me to do or doesn't anticipate me doing? So I feel like, at least in my opinion, I think that this game still holds up in saying everything that it's trying to say, and also just being goofy and at times horrifying. It is so many things in a small package.
I guess as you were saying that, something that came to my mind was that since the original release, there's been a lot more awareness and discussion about, new releases like Ultra Deluxe version.
Yeah, what exactly is going to be new, and
right, what's a sequel? What is DLC? What is, microtransactions, things like that.
Yeah, why did they re-release this under the title, new and improved or reimagined? Why didn't they just make a sequel or, all sorts of stuff like that?
Definitely worth the time, but it's up to you if it's worth the money. So do you want to move into Star Pieces?
Let's do it.
Star Pieces is the part of the show where we talk about a cool little hidden detail or something that we liked from the game. And this game is just full of star pieces. I mean, there's lots of them. Tons and tons of optional dialogue that only appears if you do a very specific thing that you could easily miss. I found things that were in the original game that I totally missed before on this playthrough, which is cool. But if I had to pick a star piece this time, I would just have to go with the narrator, Kevin Brighting, who put on a fantastic performance once again. And specifically, I really admire that he was able to be very consistent and match his performance from the original game. I think they seamlessly have woven his original lines with his newly recorded lines, and you can't tell the difference. And as someone who works with voice actors all day, coming back to do the same role years and years later, even if you have the reference, can actually be difficult. That can actually be hard to match what you were going for before. For some people, it's easier than others. But yeah, it's something I immediately picked up on and respect. How about you?
Well, Jared already mentioned this, but just the booting up screens, we kind of have, it's almost a different character in of itself, whatever entity is doing your boot up screens. I think that that's such a fun new place to do storytelling and goofs and jokes.
It really is.
I do have to ask you, Jared, did you set the clock or did you just let it stay?
I set the clock accurately each time, and I love that the game was keeping me accountable to that.
I did the same thing, and it was funny because the screen was like, hey, can I just say, I really appreciate that you took the time to correctly set the time. In fact, next time, set it to whatever time you want, just as my way of saying thank you.
Yeah, this game is very good at finding things such as menus and accessibility options and the booting up screen, and just trying to find ways to be creative with those tropes we've become familiar with in games. So, great star piece. But for every star piece, there is also a quick jab. And jab. This is where we talk about something that we didn't like about the game, usually something very minor. And in my case, my quick jab would be that there is, as of right now, there's no Steam Deck support.
Wait, Jared, are you saying that you have a Steam Deck?
I am saying that, yes. My quick jab is that I have a Steam Deck now.
Big man on campus.
No, we'll definitely talk about that in a future episode. I want to kind of go more in depth on the Steam Deck and what I think about it. But
for sure.
And, lots of games aren't supported on Deck yet, but the Deck is a computer, so it can run the games. Very specific quick jab about that, though, is that there's a part of the game where you have to enter numbers into a keypad, and there's no cursor. There's no, reticle when you're aiming for those numbers, and it was really, really difficult on Steam Deck to try and line it up so I hit the numbers correctly. Again, very minor, but that's what quick jabs is all about. So I would love it if they added an accessibility option with a reticle or something to make it slightly more player-friendly on the Steam Deck.
Believe it or not, I came with almost the exact same quick jab.
Really?
Yeah. Even though I played on my laptop, there was still no reticle, and it was still extremely difficult to punch in the keys on the keypad. Constantly, just that was the hardest part of the game. Was just 4, 8, 2, 6. Dang it!
So it's not just a Steam Deck theme, then.
I don't think so, yeah. I mean, okay. Maybe there's a setting somewhere in the menus, but just generally it was very difficult. I don't know, quick jabs are sometimes what we would like to see in a game, even though it may not necessarily improve the game. I think it'd be cool if there was more interaction with the environment. There are already so many Easter eggs just in terms of what's written on little papers on desks. But it'd be nice if, you could pick stuff up.
I actually agree with that, because a lot of the papers and objects in the game are really funny, the text on them, and it'd be nice if you could pick them up and actually read them up close instead of just awkwardly crouching to try and see it. So that is a good idea.
Yeah, I guess, but another part of the game is kind of the limitations being actually part of its jokes. You can get an achievement for trying to jump, even though it's impossible to jump. So that's
a good point, yeah. All right, so we're going to wrap up the show with one last segment, and that is Who's the Fake Fan? Fake Fan. This is the quiz segment of our podcast where we try and stump each other to see who's the bigger nerd. And Marcus, my question is very simple. In this game, there is a bucket, and that bucket you can modify in some way. Do you know how?
You can get stickers on your bucket.
Correct. And my follow-up question is, how many stickers can you get for your bucket?
Well, I know how many I got, and it is 2. And you get them in the broom closet.
So how many stickers can you get?
2. Final answer.
Correct. Okay, well done.
Yeah. Did you get the broom closet ending? It's my favorite.
Of course. That's my favorite one, for sure. So do you have a question for me?
Yes. So you've already mentioned some things from the Stanley Parable 2 Expo. So I just had a few quick trivia questions about that. One of them being, what name does the button that says your name when you click on it say?
Jim. Final answer.
Correct. Along those same lines, the next part is, in the office decoration section, what do the 2 different balloons say?
Both of them?
Yeah.
I don't remember. I got the white balloons, and I think they say "feel better soon" or "get well," or something along
not
those lines.
Soon.
Get better today. Feel better today.
No, it's worse than that.
Feel better tomorrow.
Get well someday is what it says.
Get well someday. Okay, gotcha.
But that's close. Do you know what the other one says?
I chose the other one, but isn't it birthday boy or something. I'm going to say birthday boy.
It is a birthday balloon, but it is happy 12th birthday, comma, step-niece. Happy 12th birthday, step-niece.
This proves that I'm definitely the faker fan between the two of us of this game.
I will wear this badge with pride.
Any final stray thoughts before we do an outro?
This is just, it's more an experience than a game, and it's one that I enjoy. I remember playing it the first time years ago. It almost like left a pit in my stomach because I didn't really know what to expect, and I got one of the darker endings first. But this time around, I had my roommate Nathan play, a few endings, and seeing his like absolute shock and surprise at the directions that the game went was an absolute joy.
I think that could help this game have legs, is having other people play it. And I want to end, whenever we do a review discussion, I want to end by talking about who is this game for? Like, who do we specifically recommend this game to? Because not every game is for everyone. But for this one, I would say for people who love narrative tropes, who love narrative tropes in video games, who are big fans of fourth wall breaks, and of excellent voice acting. I think if you like any of those things, you will like this game.
Yeah, I think that at one point, the narrator assumes you are dead, and he says, make sure to pass the controller off to someone who has an appreciation and an understanding of narrative video game tropes. So, I concur.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us this episode. We'll be back next week to talk more video games, but until then, I'm Jared.
I'm Marcus.
And we'll level with you next week.